Hello, my name is Joni Yang, and this is my testimony. I've been here at Sacramento Hmong Alliance Church for maybe around 13 years now. But I wasn't always a believer right from the start, And if you know me, you know that I have a really big family. There's 10 of us in total, including myself. So when I was born, my parents, they were shaman. My biological parents, they were shaman. They weren't believers. And so at the time, they were strong shaman believers. And so I grew up with a lot of, shaman practices. And so I knew a lot about, what they do, what they practice. But then, life changed, and my siblings and I, we all fell into CPS. And when we all fell into CPS, it was like my whole world flipped, and it changed, and I was very confused. But everything was a blessing in disguise, because then my auntie, my uncle, and my oldest half sister took all of us in under their care. And so we got split into, half and half. So half of us lived with my oldest half sister, and the other half of us lived with my auntie and uncle. And so I was one of the kids who, lived with my auntie and uncle. They were very sweet, and they took care of us as if we were their own kids. And they also have 4 kids of their own. So imagine 4 kids of their own, and then plus 5 of us, that's 9 kids in total. So every single day was like a party because there's just so many of us. And my auntie and uncle, they were believers. And so they attended SHAC. And so they brought me and my siblings to SHAC. And that's how I came to know God. And I remember attending Sunday school and just learning about God. We have a loving God, and He is powerful. And I remember, we would always sing these kid worship songs, our God is an awesome God. And, it was the first time that I was like, wow, we have an amazing God who is powerful, and He's almighty, and He's loving. And that was when I was drawn to God, because I was like, how amazing is that to know that we have a God who loves us? And so I was drawn to that. And then at the age of 13, that was when I accepted Christ into my life, because that was when I knew that, I was a sinner and I needed to be saved. And I wanted, Jesus to be the Lord and Savior of my life. And so I took Christ into my life and accepted Him. From there on, life was simple. I went to school. I had my siblings. It was great. There wasn't much. But as I grew older, college came around. And I knew that I needed to make a decision about whether or not I wanted to stay in Sacramento or if I should move. And so, after a while, I, made the decision to move away. And so I was going to attend UC Merced in Merced. And so, packed up all my things and I moved to Merced. And I remember the first day when I got to Merced, and my family, they helped me unpack and unload my stuff. And then once they were done, they got back into the car and they left. And I remember waving goodbye to them from my window. And the moment, they disappeared, I just felt this rush of loneliness in my heart. And I've never felt that loneliness before. And it was a very foreign, very weird experience for me, because I always grew up with my siblings. So everything that I did it with them. If we ever ate food, we all ate food together. We got to bond over a meal together. We all laughed together. If I ever went out to go shopping, I went with my siblings. And so we were always kind of like a pack, and we did everything together as a pack. But moving to Merced was the total opposite. And I had to learn to do everything on my own. And I could have asked my friends, but I think when you're in college, everyone gets so busy. We all have different schedules. So I didn't want to be a burden to them. And so I had to learn to do everything on my own. So whenever I went to the store, I would go by myself. And there are times when I was afraid of going to the store by myself, because, I was a girl, and it can be kind of dangerous when you're alone at the store. And especially when you're in a city where you're not quite familiar with the city. And so it would remind me of just, those moments would remind me of when, back at home, I would always go to the store with my siblings. But here now I have to go by myself, and there's a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. And then, sometimes I want to go out to eat, but then I don't have my siblings there with me. And so I remember just, I would always order to go, because I feel like it was weird to dine in by myself and eat by myself. And so I would always order to go, and I eat the food in my car, and I just sit in the parking lot. And sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional. Hold up. it was such a lonely experience for me because, during these moments of like eating a meal together meant a lot to me. And I would remember thinking back to, when I would always, share a meal with my siblings and how much I enjoyed it, how much I loved it. Because, I got to bond with them over, a meal. And that meant a lot to me. And there was little things like this that added up. And I feel like just living in Merced was really tough too, because school got really hard. And back at home when I was still in Sacramento with my siblings, we would go to school together. We walked to school together, and we would always share about our day at school. But here in Merced, I felt like my academic journey was just me and myself, and I didn't have anyone to share my journey with. And I feel like it was all of these little things that kind of added up, and it just kind of built up, and then it made me feel like, man, I feel like, I feel so isolated from everyone. I feel like no one's there. And I feel like no one can see me or hear me. And I felt so distant from God. And then I just remember questioning, like, God, do you hear me? Can you hear me? The feeling of loneliness, it's such a scary feeling. It feels like, the best way that I can describe it is like there's just darkness all around you, and you feel like no one's there. And so when I was going through that, I started pushing people away in my life, and I just, people would message me, for school, or maybe a couple of friends, they would message me, but I didn't really get back to them. And it was not that I didn't want to get back to them. For some reason, I just couldn't find the motivation to message them back or get back to them. And so, I was pushing people away out of my life because I just didn't have the energy to socialize with people or interact with people. And I just didn't feel like myself. And it went on for a while. And then it got to the point where I was like, Joni, I'm tired of living this pattern in my life. I can't always be pushing people out of my life, because then it only made me more lonely, and it only made me more depressed. And oftentimes I would always just sleep. I didn't even want to wake up because I feel like sleeping would help me pass time. And so I'd always sleep. I just push people away. I didn't want to do that anymore. And so one day I was like, you should just go and join the local church in Merced. I don't know why it took me so long to realize that, but I was like, I need to find God again. And I think that I need to surround myself with God's people. And so I remember, when I first attended the Alliance Church in Merced, they were so sweet. They were so welcoming. And I was like, wow, I forgot how it felt to, belong in a family again, because I longed for that and I yearned for that. And so I just remember Yonya Jays, the married women, they would greet me. They said hi, and they would ask, how are you doing? And so whenever I saw them at church on Sunday, it would always remind me of my mom back at home because they had that motherly love. And then whenever I saw the youth, they were always just so joyful, and they just had such high spirits, and they would remind me of my siblings back at home. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm so blessed to have them in my life. And it made me realize God's blessings in my life. And it made me realize, wow, Joni, God was always there, and He has always listened to you from the start, and He has blessed you with these amazing people in your life. And that's what I realized, wow, like God is good. He has never forgotten about me, And as I reflect back, to, those days of when I would go out shopping by myself to buy some stuff for school, or when I would eat alone in my car, I would be reminded of just God's goodness and His protection over me. Because anything could have happened, I was out alone in a city where I don't really know much about the city, but yet God kept me safe through all those times. And He's blessed me with amazing people who have supported me, people who love me. And just the feeling of knowing that they love and they care for you, it's such a warm feeling. And so, attending, just being able to attend Alliance Church in Merced again, or just attending a church and be able to find my church family there was probably one of the best decisions that I've made back in college and in undergrad. And when I was going through all of that, I remember I came across this Bible verse, and I'm sure that maybe many of you guys have heard of it before, but it's from Romans chapter 5, verses 3-4, and it talks about, rejoice in your sufferings, because suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, hope. And, that spoke volume to me, because, whatever suffering that we're going through, whether it be loneliness or anything, continue to just persevere. Continue to rejoice in your suffering, because that suffering will only make you stronger at the end of the day. And so that's my testimony. And I would not be here without God's help and his protection.